On the edge of Northridge University's sprawling campus, hidden behind ivy-covered walls and forgotten pathways, stood Holloway Hall, the oldest dormitory still in use. Students joked it was haunted, but most brushed it off as college myths meant to scare freshmen. Yet for Elena, a quiet literature major starting her second semester, the stories felt a little too real. She had been assigned to room 217, a small corner room with a creaky wooden floor and a single tall window that never quite closed. From the very first night, she felt like someone was watching her. At first, she blamed it on the stress of the new semester, but soon small things started to happen, strange, unsettling things. The first incident was almost forgettable. She woke up one night to find her desk lamp turned on, even though she had switched it off before bed. A few nights later, her textbooks were stacked neatly on the floor instead of on the shelf where she left them. I must have done it while half asleep, she told herself, but deep down she knew that wasn't true. 2 weeks into the semester, Elena's roommate, Maya, finally moved in. Outgoing and bold, Maya wasn't the type to believe in ghost stories. But on her very first night, she woke Elena at 2:13 a.m. with a trembling whisper. "Elena, did you hear that?" They both froze. From somewhere inside their room came a faint scratching, slow, deliberate, and close. It wasn't coming from the window or the walls. It was coming from inside the closet. Elena's heart pounded as she slid out of bed. "It's probably a rat," she said, trying to sound brave. But when she opened the closet door, the sound stopped. Everything was silent. Then they saw it. Carved into the wooden back of the closet as if by a knife were 3 words: "Don't stay here." They reported it to the dorm supervisor the next morning. He looked annoyed but unconcerned. "Probably a prank by a previous student," he said. "Holloway's full of stories like that. Just ignore it." But ignoring it wasn't so easy. Over the next week, the scratching returned, always at 2:13 a.m., and it wasn't just sounds. Maya's mirror fogged up from the inside with no explanation. Elena's phone recorded distorted whispers even when locked. One night, their door swung open on its own and a shadow passed across the floor. Even though the hallway light was off, Maya wanted to move out, but Elena was determined to uncover the truth. She spent hours in the campus library digging into Holloway Hall's history. That's when she found the story, a piece of campus lore buried in a 1983 newspaper. According to the article, room 217 was never supposed to exist. Originally, Holloway Hall had only 216 rooms, but during renovations in the 1970s, a hidden chamber was discovered behind a false wall, a small, windowless space sealed for decades. Instead of removing it, the university converted it into a dorm room. The problem? A student had died in that sealed room in 1954, trapped after a structural collapse. The body was never removed. Only the walls were rebuilt. The name of the student sent chills down Elena's spine: Mara Hensley. The same initials carved faintly into the back of their closet. That night, they decided to confront whatever was haunting them. At 2:10 a.m., they turned off the lights and sat silently, waiting. The room was cold, unnaturally cold. Then the scratching began again, louder than ever. The closet door rattled violently. The lamp flickered on and off. "Who's there?" Maya shouted. The scratching stopped. And then from the darkness, a faint female voice whispered, "Let me out." The closet burst open and a wave of freezing air knocked both girls to the floor. Elena swore she saw a pale figure crawling from the darkness, hollow eyes, fingers bloodied and raw. She screamed and scrambled for the door, but it slammed shut before she could reach it. The lights flickered wildly as the voice grew louder, desperate, furious. "Let me out!" And then just as suddenly as it started, everything stopped. Silence. The lamp steady. The closet empty. The next morning, they packed their bags and requested an immediate room change. The dorm supervisor didn't argue. He simply nodded and processed the paperwork. As they left, Elena glanced back down the hallway. Room 217 was already locked. A new sign hung on the door: "Under renovation, do not enter." But she knew the truth. That room wasn't being repaired. It was being sealed again. And deep inside its walls, beneath the layers of plaster and paint, something, or someone, was still waiting to be let out. Every campus had its traditions, and at Ridgewood University, none was more infamous than the Midnight Study Group. It started as a simple student ritual, gather in the abandoned west wing of the old Carter Library to prepare for finals, fueled by snacks, caffeine, and shared anxiety. But in 1997, 5 students vanished during one of those late-night sessions. Their bodies were never found. The doors to the west wing were sealed, and the story became a cautionary tale whispered to freshmen every fall. Most students stayed away. Most, but not Daniel, Claire, and Ravi. The 3 were second-year psychology majors, desperate to ace their upcoming exams. When Claire suggested they try the midnight study group as a fun experience, Daniel laughed it off, but Ravi, ever the thrill-seeker, was immediately on board. "Come on," he said with a grin. "It's just an old room." Those disappearances were probably urban legends. On a foggy Friday night, they snuck past the "Do Not Enter" signs and slipped through a broken window into the forbidden west wing. The air inside was cold and heavy, carrying a faint metallic smell none of them could place. Their flashlight beams danced across shelves of dust-covered books, shattered glass, and broken furniture. "This place feels wrong," Claire whispered, hugging her arms around herself. "Relax," Daniel said, forcing a smile. "We'll study for a bit, take some pics for the group chat, and leave. Easy." They found a long oak table near the center of the reading room, laid out their notebooks, and started revising. At first, everything was normal, or as normal as it could be inside a crumbling, abandoned library. But then the temperature dropped sharply. The air grew still, and from somewhere deep within the shadows came a sound, faint, rhythmic, and deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. It echoed down the empty corridor, like footsteps too slow to belong to anyone human. "Probably the pipes," Ravi said, though his voice lacked conviction. But when the tapping grew closer, heavier, and unmistakably human, their laughter died. The sound stopped just outside the room. Daniel stood up, clutching the flashlight. "Hello, is someone there?" No answer. He walked toward the doorway, heart pounding. As he stepped into the hall, the beam of light flickered, and for just a second he saw them. 5 figures standing at the far end of the corridor, motionless, their heads tilted slightly to one side. "Guys," Daniel whispered, backing into the room. "We're not alone." The tapping started again, now inside the study room. Claire gasped and pointed to the far corner. A shadow moved, thin, elongated, crawling across the ceiling like smoke. "Let's go," Ravi hissed, stuffing his books into his bag. They grabbed their things and bolted for the window, but the hallway beyond had changed. The exit they entered through was gone, replaced by an endless corridor stretching into blackness. This wasn't here before," Claire stammered. They ran, their footsteps echoing wildly. But no matter how far they went, the corridor didn't end. Doors lined the walls, each one identical, each one marked with a number. Room 1, Room 2, Room 3. The numbers climbed higher the faster they ran, but none of the doors opened. Then Daniel stopped. "Wait," he said breathlessly. "Do you hear that?" From behind one of the doors came a faint voice, weak, trembling, almost childlike. "Help us." Claire pressed her ear to the wood. "There's someone in there." Ravi grabbed the handle and twisted. This time the door opened. Inside was a small study room, a table, chairs, stacks of old books. And on the wall, written in something dark and smeared, were 5 names: Lily, Aaron, Beth, Thomas, Mia, the 5 students who disappeared in 1997. The door slammed shut behind them. The lights flickered, and the air turned icy cold. Figures emerged from the corners of the room, pale, hollow-eyed, their faces frozen in silent screams. One by one, they reached for the 3 students, their fingers leaving frost where they touched. Claire screamed. Ravi swung his flashlight wildly, shattering it against the wall. "Stay away," Daniel shouted, but the ghosts only drew closer. Their whispers filled the room, desperate, pleading, broken. They promised. They said we could go home. "Don't stay. Don't study. Leave before it takes you too." "Before what takes us?" Daniel yelled. The answer came in a sudden, deafening silence. Then the walls began to pulse and breathing almost alive. The floor shifted beneath their feet, dragging them toward the center of the room. A deep guttural moan echoed from below. The table split open. Darkness yawned beneath them, a swirling black pit pulling them down. Claire clung to the doorway, screaming for help. Ravi grabbed her arm, but his grip slipped. One by one, they were pulled toward the void, and then, nothing. When campus security found the West Wing the next morning, it was empty. No books, no flashlights. No trace of Daniel, Claire, or Ravi, just 3 names added to the wall beside the others. And on the library door, fresh graffiti appeared overnight. Study with us. Forever. Every autumn, Hawthorne College held its annual student play in the century-old Bellamy Theater. It was a tradition every drama student dreamed of. Performing on that historic stage meant recognition, prestige, and a guaranteed place in future productions. But for this year's cast, the play was more than just a performance. It was the beginning of a nightmare. The director, Professor Alden, had chosen a rarely performed script called The Maiden's Lament. It was said to be based on a real tragedy from 1892, a student actress who died on stage under mysterious circumstances. Most thought it was just dark inspiration for an old story, but on the first day of rehearsals, things already felt off. Lena, the lead actress, noticed it first. The script's final pages weren't typed like the rest, but handwritten in crimson ink. The words were disturbing, cryptic lines that didn't match the rest of the play. When she showed them to Professor Alden, he frowned. These weren't in the original copy, he muttered, but they've always been part of Bellamy's performance tradition. We include them, always. The cast laughed nervously, assuming it was just an old superstition. But as the weeks went by, the theater itself seemed to change around them. The lights would flicker during key scenes. Props moved on their own overnight. Once, Lena found dusty footprints leading from backstage to the center of the stage, but no one else had been there. One evening, during a late rehearsal, Max, who played the villain, forgot his lines and improvised. As soon as he did, the air in the theater shifted, heavy and suffocating. The temperature dropped and the stage curtain swayed violently, even though the doors were shut. Then from somewhere above the stage, a voice echoed, soft but clear. Speak the words as written. The cast froze. Did you hear that? Max whispered. Probably the wind, Lena said, though her voice trembled. But from that night onward, they didn't dare change a single line. The night of the premiere arrived. The theater was packed, the energy electric. Lena's parents sat in the front row, smiling proudly. Everything was perfect until the final act. As tradition demanded, the cast spoke the handwritten lines. The words felt strange in Lena's mouth, like an ancient chant rather than a script. The last sentence chilled her to the bone. By breath and blood we summon thee. The stage lights exploded in a flash. Darkness swallowed the room. The audience gasped. Then the crimson curtains fell without warning, trapping the actors on stage. Is this part of the show? Someone shouted from the seats. It wasn't. A low hum filled the air, deep, resonant, and unnatural. The floorboards beneath their feet began to vibrate, and from the shadowy wings of the stage she appeared. At first, Lena thought it was another actor, a woman in an old-fashioned dress, face hidden by a lace veil. But the closer the figure came, the clearer it became that this was no performer. Her skin was pale as chalk, her movements jerky and unnatural, as if her joints didn't bend the way they should. Who are you? Max whispered. The woman lifted her head. Her face was cracked like porcelain, and her empty black eyes locked onto Lena. You spoke my words, she hissed. Now I speak through you, Lena screamed as an invisible force slammed her to the ground. Around her, the other actors were thrown against walls, their bodies pinned by something they couldn't see. The audience panicked. Some rushed for the exits, but the doors wouldn't open. It was as if the theater itself was sealing them inside. The woman floated toward the center of the stage, arms outstretched. Her voice echoed, layered and inhuman. The maiden was silenced. But the play will never end. The stage floor split open with a deafening crack. A blinding red light poured out, swallowing Lena and the cast. Screams filled the air, not just from the living, but from voices older, trapped, desperate. And then silence. When campus security arrived minutes later, the theater was empty. No actors, no audience. Only the crimson curtain swaying gently in a wind that shouldn't exist. Bellamy Theater was immediately shut down. Investigators combed the building for weeks but found no trace of the missing people. The only clue was a single page from the script lying on the stage, one line scrawled across it in crimson ink. The play must go on. A year later, the drama department reopened the building, determined to erase the memory of the tragedy. They renamed the space and banned The Maiden's Lament from ever being performed again. But students still swear that on certain nights, when the moon is high and the wind is still, You can hear faint applause coming from behind the locked doors of Bellamy Theater, and the distant echo of a woman's voice reciting lines from a play that no one dares perform. Every university has its myths, strange stories whispered in dorm rooms and shared around late-night bonfires. At Stonebrook College, none was more famous or feared than the tale of the Whisper Man. According to the legend, the Whisper Man was a faceless figure who appeared if you called his name 3 times inside the North Tunnel, a forgotten maintenance passage beneath the old science building. He didn't kill you, at least not right away. Instead, he followed you, watching from shadows, whispering your name every night until you slowly went insane. Most people laughed at the story, but for Aaron, Lucas, Noah, and Sophie, it was the perfect Halloween dare. "Come on," Lucas said, grinning as they approached the rusted gate to the tunnel. "We're seniors. If we graduate without summoning the Whisper Man, did we even go to Stonebrook?" Aaron hesitated. She wasn't superstitious, but something about that tunnel made her skin crawl. The air was colder there, the silence heavier. Even Noah, usually the loudest of the group, was quiet as they stepped into the darkness. The tunnel stretched deep beneath the building, lined with peeling bricks and broken pipes. Their flashlights flickered across graffiti-covered walls, many scrawled with the same message: "Do not speak his name." "This is so cheesy," Sophie said, laughing nervously. "I bet someone's hiding down here just to scare people." "Only one way to find out," Lucas replied. He turned off his flashlight and spoke into the darkness. "Whisper Man, Whisper Man, Whisper Man." The silence that followed was deafening. For a few seconds, nothing happened. They all laughed, relieved and a little disappointed. But then, a faint and distant a voice echoed back. "Lucas." They froze. "Was that you?" Aaron asked, looking at Noah. "No," he said, his voice shaky. "I swear." The voice came again, closer this time, soft and drawn out like a breath against their ears. "Lucas." Their laughter died. The air grew colder. The tunnel lights, the few that still worked, began to flicker. And from somewhere deep in the darkness ahead, footsteps echoed. Slow, heavy, deliberate. "Okay, game's over," Sophie whispered, grabbing Aaron's arm. "Let's go." But when they turned around, the way back was gone. Where the entrance had been was now a solid brick wall. "What? How?" Noah stammered. "We just came from there." The footsteps grew louder. The voice kept calling. Not just Lucas now and all of their names. Aaron, Noah, Sophie. Something was in the tunnel with them. They ran, their flashlights jerking wildly across the walls. The deeper they went, the narrower the passage became. And then they saw it. A figure standing just ahead, motionless and facing the wall. It was tall and thin, dressed in what looked like tattered old student clothes. But its head was wrong, smooth, featureless like clay. As they watched, it slowly turned toward them. Where a face should have been, there was only a hollow black void. "Don't look at it," Aaron whispered, trembling. "Just run!" They bolted past the figure, sprinting blindly through the maze of tunnels. But no matter how far they ran, the footsteps followed, always just behind them. The whispers grew louder, layered like dozens of voices speaking at once. "You called, so now we follow." They turned a corner and burst into a large chamber, an old utility room long forgotten. In the center was a strange sight, a circle of faded chalk symbols drawn across the floor. At its center lay 4 objects, a pair of broken glasses, a leather notebook, a silver ring, and a student ID dated 1927. Aaron picked up the ID. It belonged to Thomas Whitlock, a student reported missing nearly a century ago, guys, she said slowly. "I think this isn't a story." The walls around them began to pulse like a heartbeat. The air grew so cold it burned their lungs. And from the shadows, dozens of figures emerged, all faceless, all whispering. Their clothes spanned decades, from the 1920s to the present. "They're all students," Noah whispered. "All the ones who called his name." The faceless figures closed in, circling them. The whispers became screams. Lucas fell to his knees, clutching his head. Sophie sobbed, backing away as cold hands brushed against her skin. "We have to finish the circle," Aaron shouted, grabbing the chalk. "It's some kind of ritual." With trembling hands, she redrew the faded symbols. As she completed the last one, the room shook violently. The whispers turned into shrieks. The figures recoiled, their hollow faces twisting in silent rage. And then, silence. The lights flickered once and died. When they came back, the chamber was empty. The four friends were lying on the cold floor near the tunnel entrance. It was dawn. The brick wall was gone. They stumbled back to campus, shaken but alive. None of them spoke about what happened. Not to friends, not to professors. But that night, as Erin lay in bed, she heard it. A whisper, soft, close, impossible. Erin. A month later, campus police discovered a new piece of graffiti at the tunnel entrance. Say his name. And he will never leave. And late at night, when the campus is silent and the tunnels are still, students swear they hear footsteps beneath their feet, and a voice whispering names that haven't been spoken in decades.